78 men, kitchen knives, meat cleavers, sharpened sticks. That is how the most famous rebellion in history began. They broke out of a gladiator training school in southern Italy roughly 2,100 years ago. Within months, they had defeated every army Rome sent against them. Within 2 years, their ranks had swollen to roughly 90,000. Escaped slaves, field workers, shepherds, men and women who had never held a sword, marching behind a former soldier turned gladiator who had decided that dying free was better than living as property. Rome responded with its most merciless weapon, not a legion, a road. 6,000 captured rebels were nailed to wooden crosses and placed along the highway leading into the capital. One cross every 30 meters, stretching for over 200 kilometers, the largest mass execution in recorded Roman history. The bodies were left to rot. No one was allowed to take them down. For over 2,000 years, no physical trace of the rebellion has been found in the ground. No grave, no camp, no body identified as belonging to any of the rebels. Then, in 2024, archaeologists uncovered a wall in the forests of southern Italy, built by the Roman general who crushed the revolt. And in 2025, a gladiator's marble tombstone was found in a cemetery near the same city where the rebellion began. For over a century, scholars believed the rebellion left no archaeological trace. DNA says otherwise. The evidence has been buried along the same roads the Romans used to display their victory. And science is only now learning how to find it. This is the story of a man whose body was never recovered, whose grave has never been found, and whose rebellion left marks in the ground that took 2,000 years to surface. He was born in a region the Romans called Thrace, a mountainous territory that today straddles the borders of Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Ancient sources suggest he served in the Roman army as an auxiliary, a non-citizen soldier recruited from the provinces. At some point, he left or deserted and was captured. The Romans sold him to a gladiator training school in the city of Capua, roughly 25 kilometers north of modern Naples. The school was one of the largest in Italy, feeding fighters to the arenas across the peninsula. Gladiators were slaves. They were property. They were trained to perform violence for public entertainment, and they were expected to fall when the crowd demanded it. The amphitheatre at Capua was enormous. Its dimensions nearly matched those of the Colosseum in Rome, which would not be built for another 150 years. The arena floor was an oval, roughly 170 meters long. The facade rose 4 stories high. 80 arches lined each level, each keystone carved with the face of a god. In 2024, the amphitheatre, along with the ancient city and the road that connected it to Rome, was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists now walk through the same tunnels where gladiators once waited to enter the arena. The underground passages still smell of damp stone. It was inside these walls, or ones very like them, that the man from Thrace spent his final months as property. He trained with weapons. He fought on the arena floor. He learned how to survive in a world designed to consume him. In the year we would now place at roughly 73 years before the Common Era, he and 77 other gladiators planned an escape. The plot was betrayed before it could be executed cleanly. The gladiators acted immediately, seizing kitchen equipment, meat cleavers, and roasting spits from the school's food stores. They fought their way through the guards and out of the building. They fled south to Mount Vesuvius, the same volcano that would bury Pompeii 150 years later. At this point in history, the mountain was a quiet, vine-covered slope surrounded by wealthy farming estates. The escaped gladiators made camp near the summit. Rome did not take the breakout seriously. The Senate sent a force of 3,000 militia, not trained legionaries, to surround the mountain and wait the slaves out. The gladiators descended the slope using ropes made from wild vines, circled behind the Roman position, and attacked from the rear. The militia was routed, the gladiators captured their weapons, and suddenly, a prison break became a war. Word spread across southern Italy. Enslaved people on farms and in households began abandoning their owners and walking toward the rebel camp. The army grew from 78 to thousands within weeks, then tens of thousands. By the second year of the revolt, the rebel force numbered roughly 70 to 90,000. They defeated 2 Roman consular armies in open battle. They controlled most of southern Italy. Trade routes were severed. Wealthy estates were raided and burned. The Roman grain supply was threatened. The Senate began to panic. For the first time in living memory, a slave army was winning. Rome turned to a man named for his wealth and his ambition. He was the richest man in Rome, a senator who had made his fortune buying the property of executed political rivals during the civil wars. He assembled an army of 8 legions, roughly 40,000 soldiers, and marched south. His strategy was not to fight the rebels head-on, it was to trap them. In 2024, archaeologists working in the Dossone della Malaya forest, in the Calabria region of southwestern Italy, uncovered a stone wall stretching over 2.5 kilometres through dense woodland. The wall was built from local stone, reinforced with earthworks, and positioned to block access to a narrow peninsula of land. Alongside the wall, researchers found broken iron weapons buried in the soil. Sword handles, curved blades, javelin points, a spearhead. The weapons were consistent with both Roman military equipment and improvised armaments. The archaeological team concluded that this was the wall described in ancient sources as the fortification built by the Roman general to trap the rebel army on the southern tip of Italy. The rebels had retreated south, hoping to cross to Sicily by sea. The general built a wall across the base of the peninsula to seal them in. The rebel leader broke through the wall in a desperate night assault, but the breakout split his forces. 2 of his sub-commanders were cut off and defeated separately. The rebel army was fragmented. In the spring of the following year, the final battle took place somewhere in southern Italy. The exact location has never been identified. No monument marks the spot. No inscription records the name of the field. Ancient writers describe the rebel leader dismounting from his horse before the fight and plunging a blade into the animal's chest. The gesture was deliberate. It meant he was not planning to retreat. If they won, there would be captured Roman horses for everyone. If they lost, a horse would not save him. He was seen fighting his way toward the Roman general during the battle. He did not reach him. He fell somewhere on the field, surrounded by the bodies of his men. His remains were never identified. Ancient sources note that after the battle his body could not be distinguished from those of the thousands of ordinary soldiers who fell beside him. He may have been wearing plain armor. He may have removed any insignia. The man who led the largest slave revolt in Roman history chose to end his life looking like every other slave who followed him. One ancient writer observed that even if his grave were found someday, it would be impossible to tell the famous commander from the men who fought at his side. The armor was ordinary. The body was ordinary. The only thing extraordinary was what he had done with the time he had. The aftermath was designed to ensure no one would ever try again. 6,000 captured survivors were crucified along the Appian Way, the most important highway in the Roman world, stretching from Capua to the gates of Rome. Ancient sources record that the crosses were placed at regular intervals, one every 30 meters, lining both sides of the road for over 200 kilometers. The Appian Way still exists. Visitors walk its original basalt paving stones today, shaded by cypress trees, in an archaeological park on the outskirts of modern Rome. The road is beautiful and quiet. Most tourists do not know what happened there. The basalt blocks are the same ones that were laid roughly 2,300 years ago. They were already old when the crosses were erected along their edges. The stones are worn smooth by the feet of legionaries, merchants, pilgrims, and now tourists who photograph the pine trees and the ruined tombs without knowing what the soil beneath the road contains. A modern visitor walking from the tomb of Caetilia Metella toward the city centre would cover roughly 5 kilometres. In the spring of that year, that same walk would have passed more than 160 crosses, men hanging in the Italian sun, visible from every window of every farmhouse along the route. The message was not subtle. It was never meant to be. The road was Rome's most public space. The display was Rome's most public statement. Try this again, and this is what happens. No mass grave from the crucifixion has ever been found. Bodies in the Roman world were typically left to decompose on the cross or thrown into unmarked pits. The bones would have scattered, mixed with road fill, or been consumed by animals. But the absence of physical remains does not mean the evidence is gone. It means the evidence requires different tools. In April of 2025, archaeologists near the ancient city of Liternum, roughly 30 kilometers north of where the gladiator school stood, excavated a Roman-era necropolis containing more than 20 burials. Among them, a grave marked with a marble slab, engraved with the name and profession of the deceased. He was a gladiator. The inscription confirmed it. The marble was carved with deliberate care, indicating that someone, a patron, a fellow fighter, or a fan, had invested in commemorating this man's life. The burial ground also contained simple tombs reserved for lower-class Romans and ceramic jar burials used for the poorest members of society. Gladiators, slaves, and freedmen were buried side by side in a cemetery just a short walk from the amphitheatre where they had fought. This is not the cemetery of the rebellion. The dates do not match precisely, but it is the cemetery of the same system that produced the rebellion. The same training schools, the same arenas, the same hierarchy that turned human beings into entertainment and then, sometimes, buried them with marble. The gladiator in the Liternum grave was not a rebel, but he lived and died inside the same machine, and his DNA, if it can be extracted from the skeleton, will tell scientists something no inscription can, where he came from. This is where the science becomes powerful, not in confirming what we already know, but in answering the question that history cannot. The rebel army was not ethnically homogeneous. Ancient sources describe it as a mixture of Thracians, Gauls, Germans, and people from across the Italian countryside, shepherds from the Apennine Hills, field workers from the grain estates of Campania and Sicily, house slaves from urban villas, dock workers from the ports, women and children who had followed their men out of bondage. The revolt drew from every corner of the empire's enslaved population. They spoke different languages. They came from different cultures. The only thing they shared was their legal status, property. DNA from Roman-era slave and gladiator cemeteries across Italy is beginning to reveal the true genetic diversity of the people Rome enslaved. The York Gladiator Cemetery in England, which we covered in a previous video, showed that fighters were drawn from as far as the Middle East. Isotope studies from Pompeii showed Eastern Mediterranean ancestry in the majority of tested individuals. For over a century, scholars believed Roman slavery drew primarily from the Mediterranean basin. DNA says otherwise. The genetic evidence is revealing a system that reached into every corner of the known world, from the forests of Germany to the deserts of Syria, from the mountains of Thrace to the coasts of North Africa. The arena and the field consumed human beings from 3 continents, and their bones carry the proof. If the Laternum skeletons yield usable DNA, and if burial grounds closer to the rebellion's heartland in Campania and Calabria are excavated and tested, the genetic map of Roman slavery will come into focus. We will know not just that Rome enslaved people from across 3 continents, but exactly which populations were fed into the gladiator system and which ended up in the fields. The rebel leader himself remains invisible. His body was never recovered. His grave, if one exists, has never been identified. He died in armor that matched everyone else's. He was buried, if he was buried at all, in a pit with thousands of unnamed men. But the system he fought against left its own bones in the ground, in cemeteries at Capua, at Laternum, at Pompeii, at York. Each skeleton is a data point. Each DNA sample narrows the map. We will almost certainly never find his body, but we may find the bodies of the men who trained beside him, fought beside him, and died in the same revolt. And their DNA will tell us where they came from, how far the empire reached to fill its arenas and its fields, and what the true human cost of Roman slavery looked like, written not in marble or in chronicle, but in bone. The wall in the forest has been found. The gladiator's tombstone has been read. The road where 6,000 men were displayed as a warning still runs through the Italian countryside, its basalt stones worn smooth by 20 centuries of feet. Everyone knows his name. No one knows where he lies. He chose to look like every other man who followed him into the last battle. He chose to be unrecognizable, and in doing so, he made sure that every unnamed skeleton found along the roads of southern Italy could be him. Every set of bones in a slave cemetery, every unmarked pit near an ancient battlefield. He is everyone, and he is no one. And the only way to narrow the search is through the science of the bones themselves. For over 2,000 years, scholars believed the rebellion left nothing in the ground. DNA says otherwise. The bones of the enslaved are still there, buried along the same roads their masters built, waiting for science to give them back their origins. Discovery continues. Thanks for watching. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover DNA mysteries, ancient forensics, and the cases history tried to forget.